Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody who is joining us today for a conversation about the implications of COVID-19 in Kuwait, in Qatar, and in Jordan. While we wait to officially start, I'm going to make a few housekeeping announcements. So for the interpretation channels, today we will have with us an Arabic interpretation on the Chinese channel. We will have Hindi on the Japanese channel, and we will have French on the French channel, the only commonsensical one. So you can see on the screen which channels to follow to get your interpretation. And you could also introduce yourselves, where you're from, in the chat box. And once you have questions for us, there is a Q&A section where you can start typing your questions as soon as you get them. So we will be starting shortly. Are we ready to start?
Thank you, Rula.
Okay.
Some
The floor is yours, Lara.
challenges. Thank you, Rula. So I'm guessing that those of you who need interpretation have joined the different channels. If not, feel free to text us and we can try help with that. So thank you all for taking the time to join us today. It has been a tough year for everyone, and we hope that the coming year is better and kinder to all of us. We, as the IDWF, have tried to look into the challenges and experiences of domestic workers in the region that came about as a result of the pandemic, as well as the measures that governments in this region have taken to try to stop or mitigate this pandemic. So we will be discussing the results of this study today through this webinar. I just want to check if our President Myrtle has joined. If I think not yet.
Elizabeth is here.
Okay.
I see Elizabeth is here. Lara, please say.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, so I think we will, Elizabeth, would you like to say something, or shall we wait for Myrtle to join and then, or we can start and then whenever Myrtle is able to join us, she can say a few words. I think this is the downside of virtual meetings, the technical difficulties that are upcoming.
Yeah, Lara, let's do the presentation. I think it'll be better. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome everyone. Good morning, good day, good afternoon, good evening. We have been very exciting to have been together with many of you here to do this survey, to produce the report, and then finally to share the results with all of you here. As we all have experienced in the last 1 year, all the challenges under the pandemic. And we have tried very hard as IDWF, as domestic workers organizations, to support our sisters so that they will be able to address the challenges so that their lives will be less stress, will be better. But we know that at the end of the day, all the domestic workers need better laws, better social protections, so that in the future, when there is similar stress, similar crisis come, we will be protected and no one will have to suffer as many of us has suffered. And as IDWF, we believe that domestic workers deserve better. And we believe that if we speak together, if we act in solidarity, we will have enough power to change the situation, and we will be able to enjoy the rights and protection as any other workers. Even though we are migrant workers, but we are workers. So I like to take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you to be here, especially those who have helped us to do these surveys, who has spent the time, spent the energy to help us to complete the survey questionnaires, to provide their ideas, their comments, so that we will be able to produce this report. And I thank you very much. So now I will be here to listen to all of you and to the result of the report.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. And now I think Myrtle has joined us. So Myrtle.
Hi, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I would like to congratulate Lara and the MENA region for this fantastic research they've done. I think this is something that we all need in the new world we are living in. We need to find ways of how we can actually speak to workers, how we can interview workers, and how we can find out how workers is making it and how they're working in this new world we're living in. We also need researchers to see how can we help those workers. We cannot help everybody, but we can find ways of how we can make it easier, how we can support campaigns, and how we can support workers within the MENA region. I think that it would have been very challenging for workers to speak up, because at the moment we also need to understand workers are scared to speak up. As soon as somebody see them speaking up, or as soon as somebody see their names, they might be, chased out of the country. They might have to go back to their own countries. We also need to understand that workers suffer because we're away from our families. We're in a new country with their own laws and regulations. And as much as we want to be free, we have to listen and abide by that rules. And for that, I think this is very important, like Elizabeth was saying. It is very important for us this afternoon to understand and to see how workers is coping, to understand their fear. And maybe it is just like we say, we now only give virtual hugs to everybody. Maybe just to give them that hug and to say to them, let us go forward. Let us equip ourselves. Let us understand the new technology that's taking over the world. Let the IDWF start working on how can we ensure that the leadership, that workers understand. Sometimes you laugh when workers say, what must I press now? Is it mute or is it unmute or what are you saying? So we need to bring our workers to that level. I see also Joy and some of the others that I know. It is lovely to see you, only if we see each other on the screen. So thank you very much, Laura, and all that been involved, all those workers. We wish you strength, and we know that, like they say, we will rise and we will rise above all of this. Thank you very much for inviting me here this afternoon. Thanks.
Thank you, Myrtle. So what I will be doing now is I will be sharing my screen just to share a presentation of some slides. It will be in English, but for those of you listening to the interpretation, no worries, because everything on the slides will be read out, so you won't miss out on anything. So, as mentioned before, the IDWF wanted to explore the experiences of domestic workers under the COVID-19 pandemic and the challenges that they are facing. So we looked at the living situations, health conditions, and working conditions of domestic workers in 3 countries in this region: in Jordan, Kuwait, and Qatar, by administering a quantitative survey with around 200 domestic workers in each country. We asked questions around personal information, employment status, and the situation under COVID-19. And this study took place in October and November 2020. So the data collectors were trained volunteers, mostly domestic workers themselves. Thank you very much for all your time and efforts that resulted in this study and this information gathered on domestic workers in the region. After we conducted the study, we had consultation calls in each of the 3 countries with the data collectors and domestic workers to reflect on these results, and they shed some light on a few issues. So this is something that we will also include in our discussion today. Firstly, some limitations are that the data collectors needed training on conducting this specific work since it was new, and this took time. Also, there were some language barriers. And most importantly, the community that we are working with is one that is hidden and not easy to access. So the method we had to use is the snowballing technique to find domestic workers that could respond to the survey. So we already know that those we have reached are in a way or another connected to a certain network or have communication with other domestic workers. So those who are not connected don't have ties or a network of individuals they communicate with, we weren't able to reach, unfortunately. So this study actually documented some information that we already knew and now have data for. So the majority of domestic workers in these 3 countries are women and are migrants. They rely on these jobs as a main source of income and majority are the sole provider for their families back home. In Kuwait and Qatar, most of the workers worked for one employer and lived in the residence, whereas in Jordan, there were as many workers that worked for many employers as there were workers that lived and worked with one employer. The information they received on COVID-19 was from social media, friends, and family. In Jordan and Kuwait, it's interesting to see that a majority of the respondents were aware that the government is taking measures to mitigate COVID-19. However, in Qatar, 45% said the government is taking measures only, and 53% said that they do not know. We also wanted to look into their situation in terms of contracts and information on laws. And in Jordan, 31% of the respondents, 49% in Qatar, and 62% have an employment contract. And we saw that a big number of the respondents do not know whether they have an employment contract or not. So during our consultation calls, we asked about this. And in all 3 countries, the response was that it's probably because employers or agencies do not want to share the contract or the information on it with the workers, and that some might not have a contract because they are undocumented, might have entered illegally or under a tourist visa and started working, or at some point had a contract but never renewed it. It's also really interesting to see that all these three countries in the MENA do have certain regulations or laws that are specific to domestic workers. However, when we asked them if this country has a specific law on domestic work, 50% responded yes in Jordan, 49 in Kuwait, and 45 in Qatar. So we see that only around half of the respondents are aware that such a law exists. These three graphs show the documents, the official documentation that domestic workers carry themselves, because we know that this is a big issue that is talked about in the region. And we see that in Kuwait and Qatar, the residency permits are the most common documentation that domestic workers carried around, whereas in Jordan, this number was relatively low. We then moved on to cross this information with the nationality. And we realized that in all three countries, the Filipino domestic workers were the largest number of domestic workers that carried any form of official documentation compared to all the other nationalities. We also wanted to take a look at the living space that these domestic workers live in. So we asked if how many people they share a space with, whether they live with their employer or with outside the employer's house. And in Qatar, we see that most domestic workers share a space with 4 to 6 people, including themselves. And in Kuwait, this number jumps. It's higher. 44% share space between 6 to 8 people. And in Jordan, it seems to be a lower number, because we saw that a lot more of the participants lived with only 1 to 4 people. In terms of health, in all three countries, domestic workers with medical conditions have been receiving treatment. However, the source of this treatment and involvement of the employers differ. In Kuwait and Qatar, half the participants said that their employer is completely in charge of providing them with medical treatment. In Jordan, this number decreases a lot, and only 11% said their employers cover medical costs. When we asked the Jordan team to explain this, they said because it might be that more workers work for more than one employer, so this responsibility is not held by just one employer. In terms of time off, in Kuwait, 34% were not allowed any time off, 35% in Qatar, and 6% in Jordan. So this might also be consistent with the idea that a lot of them are freelancers rather than employed by one employer only. And even in Jordan, we saw that one group shared that they can take time off whenever they want to. All of these who said that are working for one employer and do not live inside the employer's house. More than one employer. In this graph, we wanted to take a look at the salaries that the domestic workers gain per month. And in yellow, we see the numbers for Jordan, in green for Kuwait, and in pink for Qatar. And we see that the majority earn between 300 to 500 US dollars per month. But Jordan does show a higher percentage of earnings because the number is higher in the range between $500 to $700. We then looked at these numbers in each of the country and looked at the nationalities, because we wanted to see if there is a difference between different nationalities earning different amounts of money. Because in these countries, there isn't yet a standard that is applied to everyone. And in Jordan, the majority of the Bangladeshi domestic workers earn only between 100 to 300 US dollars, and the workers from Indonesia were the highest paid. So in Kuwait, the majority of fell under the 300 to 400 range, and workers from Philippines, India, and Ethiopia were the highest paid. In Qatar, the significant result was that workers from Kenya were paid less than other workers in the country, where 59% of the workers from Kenya earned only from 0 to 300 US dollars per month. On the calls, when we asked for a possible observation of this, the comment was that in cases where the domestic worker works for more than one employer, then the amount adds up. So the sum of money is probably higher than if she works for only one employer. And this might explain why the Indonesian community in Jordan earns a lot more. It's because the majority of them are freelancers. In terms of COVID, only a relatively small number lost their jobs, so either were fired or could not find a source of employment. So it was, out of the respondents, it was 2 in Qatar, 19 in Kuwait, and 69 in Jordan. And live-in domestic workers who work for one employer have been the least likely to lose their jobs because of the pandemic. When during our conversations, it was noted that in Qatar and Kuwait, documented domestic workers were really needed at this time, so the employers could not afford to let go of them. In Kuwait, they also commented that many undocumented workers left during the amnesty period, so they were not included on the study, and those are workers that have mostly lost their jobs. Sorry. In Jordan, this could be explained by the by the large amount of domestic workers that work for more than one employer. So although not many lost their jobs, still they have been subjected to other new regulations related to their employment, like they have been forced to stay within the employer's home, even if they previously weren't forced to do so. They were forced to work more hours or forced to work less and receive less pay. Other than employment conditions, a lot of mental and physical health concerns were raised, financial challenges, difficulties staying in touch with friends and family, and an increased tension in the place of residence, where it is whether they live with their employer or not. We also wanted to see how safe they feel in relation to the threat of violence. So we asked them to mark how safe they feel on a scale from 1 to 5, 1 being not safe at all and 5 being very safe. And again, this graph shows the results where pink is Qatar, Kuwait is green, and Jordan is yellow. In Kuwait, we see that it is we have the highest number of those who do not feel safe. So the higher number of participants answered 3, whereas in Jordan and Qatar, the numbers were mostly 4 and 5. And it's interesting to note that almost all the respondents have not contracted COVID-19. So till the time we conducted this survey. We also wanted to look at the support that they are receiving from the governments they reside in or community organizations, community groups, and non-governmental organizations. And the support they received from both was really minimal. And governments were supporting on different levels. And it is clear that NGOs and community groups were able to reach a higher number when it comes to aid. Most of the aid was in-kind assistance like food or personal protective equipment. So one comment just in relation to the aid is that we also tried to look at whether they are members in any groups or have a valid residency, whether this affected their access to aid, but we could not find any correlation between that. So it was not a factor. Awareness of domestic workers community groups. So just to note that all three of these countries do have domestic workers community groups in them that are formed of different nationalities depending on the country. So we asked them whether they know of these community groups, and the numbers varied. In the three countries, 28% in Jordan, 26% in Qatar, and 26% in Kuwait and 23% in Qatar said they do know about these groups. And the majority of those who knew about these groups worked for only one employer. So this might also be there might also be a link there. When we look later at the nationalities, we see that in each of the countries, there are certain nationalities that were completely aware of the existence of these groups, and other nationalities that were aware of them. So when we asked the three countries during our consultations about this and why that might be the case, they said that some communities don't have access or have less access to smartphones or an internet connection, while others might just use social media less, and that they think that those who do not have a day off might be less aware of the existence of community groups. So we gathered all this information and used it to come up with a list of recommendations for the governments. So we asked governments to revise aid policies and packages in a way that would ensure access to domestic workers, to ensure that testing is available to domestic workers and that measures are put in place to remove barriers such as the discretion or limits to freedom that the employers might impose on domestic workers, to strengthen mechanisms for the implementation of legal reforms in order to better protect lives and improve the labor conditions of domestic workers, to communicate effectively and in an accessible manner on health measures, to enforce labor rights as specified in the labor laws and regulations. As mentioned, all three countries have something specific for domestic workers, and to ensure social protection. In terms of domestic worker community groups and non-governmental organizations, we recommend that they strengthen outreach and communication with domestic workers, because as we saw that there is a discrepancy between nationalities, and also a lot of the respondents were not aware of these groups. And make sure to incorporate different languages that the workers speak, to deliver news about COVID-19 updates, testings, and assistance, to lobby governments for more protections for domestic workers under COVID-19, and for access to the vaccine once they become available, which is happening now, to work on updating information about the conditions of COVID-19 and domestic workers, because we know that the situation continues to change and evolve. Findings from Jordan suggest that domestic workers who are freelancers and work for more than one employer have been more likely to lose their jobs. So it's important to see how they are coping with this loss of income and how governments and organizations can support them. And we saw that a majority of the employers have been providing domestic workers with personal protective equipment. And we know that these measures are very effective with preventing COVID-19. So it's important to continue monitoring that the employers continue to account for these measures. So now we have 3 data collectors and domestic worker leaders with us on the webinar today. And we would like to hear a bit of experiences and stories that they would like to share with us. So I will now stop sharing my screen so that we can all see them. And first of all, I would like to invite Maggie from Qatar. to, hi Maggie, to first introduce
Hello.
yourself.
Okay, my name is Margaret Kabue. I represent domestic worker in Qatar. I'm from Kenya, and I have been in Qatar for the past 8 years, and I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be able to, I was happy to conduct the survey, and I have learned a lot, which I will share later.
Thank you, Maggie. So one of the things you wanted to share with us is something that you will never forget because of this experience that you had conducting the study.
Yes. One of the things that the experience I got and what I will never forget during the interview is that I remember the experience is an eye-opener for me and for other interviewers. First, it was not easy for someone to trust a stranger. Like you call someone and first I call the people that I know and they refer me to their friends. So you call someone, you are totally a stranger over the phone. I could feel their fear for being exposed because most of them, they were scared to be exposed. They did not know what was the survey of, whether it was going to be shared by the government and everybody will know about it. So first of all, we have to assure them that this was just a survey. We are not going to share their contact. And most of them, they did not share their phone number, though we did not force them to do that. So most of them, they were scared to be exposed and prosecuted by authority or sponsor just for sharing some information. And while thinking of that, the trust is there, but when you get to the last page of the questions, somebody will back off and she will tell you, no, I don't want you to go ahead, don't submit my details. And it happened to me like 5 people. And it was not easy to start question 1 to the last one. And most of them online, like WhatsApp questions, because most of them, they did not have Qatar lines. So, and it is not easy to call Kenyan's number from here. So you'll do a survey for questions for 3 days. And the last day, somebody will tell you, please, no, don't submit. Anyway, I was feeling like, oh, but then I have to understand them because most of them, they don't know their rights. They don't know what will happen. And even it happened to someone that I know. 2 of them, they are people that I know, and they know me very well. And they still do not trust me, and they will tell you, please don't share and don't submit my questions, and I will go ahead and move to the other person. And the second one was language. Like for me, I did Kenya and Ghana and few Sri Lanka ladies. Like me, I'm from Kenya. My interviewer is from South Asia and she cannot speak English, but fluent in Arabic. So I was forced to think first of a broken English combined with broken Arabic, and we get along just fine. And sometimes I used to Google some word to approach them in Sri Lanka, Tamim and other language. So I have learned a lot, and the experience was okay. And it was both exciting for both me and them. The third one was the tricky one. Through my surveyor, because most of the people, they encountered interviewer that they'll get something after you interview them. You'll give them a token, even after telling them that this is volunteering and there is no token, but they will ask for it. And last and the tricky one, it was the timing. Like most of the domestic worker, and this survey we did it during lockdown. So most of the employers are still home, and when they are home, domestic worker work like full time. They don't have time of their own. So it was tricky. But when you call in the evening, she's already tired because of working till late at night. And I could feel their guilty robbing. I feel guilty robbing them their rest time. So we try again the next day. You call morning, she'll tell you call afternoon, all this time. And maybe the time she's giving you, you will be also busy because we have our own duty. So it was trickiest to do with the timing. So we try again and again until we're done and get our job done.
Thank you so much, Maggie. That's, I mean, you had a very, very tough job and to collect this data. And as you mentioned, there are so many challenges, and we really appreciate your help with this. So which part of the study helped you get a better idea of the situation of domestic workers in these three countries?
Okay. When I looked at the rate of working hours, most of these ladies, they work more than 20 hours. They don't have off day. And some of them, even they look after disabled old people and kids, needy people. And still they don't have off day. And the employer expects them to be active and fast at work. Some had time to access to communication with friends and family. It was also difficult to sending money. Most of these domestic workers, they used to send drivers, and those who don't have driver where they are working, they used to send their friends. And some they did not send money for the past 3 months because they were not allowed to go out, and the sponsor will not do. Even they ask if you can transfer through the bank, because domestic worker, we don't have bank account. So they don't want to help them. There's other thing is to access medical facility. At the height of the pandemic across those three countries, I wonder if domestic workers are suffering this much in those wealthy regions. What more from the places? That is a question to ask. Because like most of the domestic workers, when they get sick, sponsor can offer is Panadol. Whether you have stomachache, whether you have something you don't understand, whether you have a flu, they will give you Panadol extra. So most of domestic workers end up being really sick, and like they don't eat well. So you can imagine they get stressed more, tension, that they might get COVID. Most of them, they did not get proper, they don't sleep well, the place where they sleep. So it was not easy for them. I found also opportunity that we need to educate these people, especially from Asia. This Sri Lanka team, I think something has to be done for them, because I realized they don't know, and most of them, they are not ready to learn. They are just here to make money. And by the end of the day, I think they suffer more, but they don't know. Because it's not only the money, the things which are happening before you get that money. And let me check, get lost somewhere. And like I said about the community organization like us, we can work on to increase the number of domestic workers, to educate them on their right. As this has to be done, I think if we can get it, like we have visa center where they will know before they come here. Because like if somebody come from Kenya, they come through agents, we don't know them. When they go to their employer, they don't have phones, so they don't know who to contact or whether there is group. Some of them, they don't even know whether they have embassy here. So I think the best thing can be done is all the men home. At least, you know, like if you go there, you have right to have your salary on time, 3 meals per day. That's morning. You need to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And that should be a proper meal, not just something. Because most of them, they come here and they will be fed with noodles, leftover, and you have been working for 20 hours and they will give you just noodles. The next thing they need to know about contract. Most of those agents, they sign contract for domestic worker. Most of the domestic worker, they get their contract at the airport, and you will be forced to sign. You don't know even what you are signing. You don't even have time to go through it. So you end up signing something. When you come here, you realize, oh, and you cannot call back that, oh, I did not know, or what. They will force you to do what you signed for. The salary, you'll find what they told you is different with what is on the contract. And they should know about their who to communicate to when they are in trouble. If they cannot reach embassy, there is community team, community leaders. So I think we have a lot of this to work on, because if you say that when they come here, we educate them, we'll get like, when they will come here like 10, and we'll have to know like 3 of them. So 7 will be suffering inside the sponsor house. And they need to keep their documents. They need to go for medical when they come here. Most of the domestic work, I came to realize they don't even go for medical. They don't have IDs. And those who went to get ID, they don't even know how their IDs look like. And most of them, they see their IDs when they are going for medical facility, because you need to use your ID. There's a lady in Qatar. She's sick and her hands have burned, both hands. And she's here for 1 year and 6 months. And they could not take her to the hospital because they did not take her for medical. She doesn't have ID. And you know, in Qatar, before you go anywhere, you need to have a trash. And what they did, they have to take her to a private hospital, and she was not treated. So it was so hard, and she went through a lot before she could get doctor to check on her. Because if you don't have a trash, you know, you cannot, you have to have a trash on your name. And here, you know, you cannot get a Qatar number without ID. So that's all things we need to tell our people back home. We need to educate them through media that things they need to do when they come here. The first things they need to know: medical, keep your document, because like here, if you don't have ID, the police will catch you. And most of these things happen when police catch you outside there, you don't have ID. Your sponsor might report you as a runaway, and you have nothing you can do. Case of runaway here is like a crime. And the moment you enter the police station, you cannot be able to communicate to anyone, and you find yourself back home. So they need to know they should keep their document. They should go for medical. They should have ID. Even if your sponsor will not take you, you need to ask.
Thank you so much for sharing these stories. These are examples of the hardship that domestic workers are going through. And thank you for listening also to these stories. It must be very difficult for you.
Yeah.
So now we will move to Rosario. And first, if you can introduce yourself. Jinx.
Hello, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone from Lebanon, Kuwait, Jordan, and Qatar. My name is Rosario Dano. Actually, my colleagues called me Ching. I've been here in Qatar for 8 years, and I'm working as a domestic worker with 3 great families. Actually, I was I was about to transfer to another sponsor again next month. So I've been working in Bayanihan, Qatar for almost 4 years, and just last year we recognized the Bayanihan Domestic Workers Qatar as an organization, one of the organization that fights for the rights of domestic workers here in Qatar, and I was one of the officers. They elect me as the president of the organization. And I am with Miss Malu Valientes for since 2017. being a domestic workers, we have, of course, it's a hard work. We need hard work, and we need a lot of patience because we are working in a family, different attitudes. We deal with different people, and I must say that my experience as domestic workers here in Qatar is a great one. All of my sponsor was good. They treat me as part of the family. They give my rights and my benefits, and I was able to go home yearly. And but sad to say, some of my fellow domestic workers, they need to wait. They need to finish 2 years before they can go home to visit their family and come back to Doha. So that's it.
Hello, Ching. Thank you for being here. So, which of the data presented in this study do you think you can use as a motivation for BDWQ, so Bayanihan Qatar domestic workers? As you mentioned that now that you're an organization and you're working
Yes.
on future plans.
Yes, Bayanihang domestic workers have been taken have been taken notes, 2 points from the survey. This awareness rate domestic worker law in Qatar, which is and the existence of community group. Well, domestic worker law in Qatar was just approved last August 22, 2017. So it is still new, just like my organization. It's still a baby. But it should not be approved last 2017. It was not be an excuse that most sponsor will not comply, like they didn't give the benefits, the rights, like day off, the end of service of my fellow domestic workers. But and now 2021, we will try to minimize the gaps, of course, the gaps between sponsor and employee or domestic workers through the collaboration with the government agencies here in Qatar by POLOA, Philippine Embassy, Ministry of Labor, and Ministry of Labor, together with my organization and the Bayanihan Qatar also. Of course, we will collaborate with other community groups, community leaders from different nationalities also, and we will make the social media platforms and to mobilize this law. And of course, if we can go house to house, if we can go house to house, and the sponsor will allow us to talk to their domestic workers, and the sponsor will allow us to explain them, because most sponsor is not aware of this law. Yes, just like one of my friend, she's asking me about her rights because her sponsor is not aware of this law. So I have the copy. Like, I think it was 2018 when I first met Miss Elizabeth Tang of the IDWF. They gave me the copy of this one about the sorry. They gave me the copy of a book, which is this one, Domestic Workers Law, like Law 15 of 2017. So one of my friends asked me about this one, asked me a copy of this, and I forwarded her through Messenger, and her sponsor is Arabic, and it was written by English and Arabic. So it's a good thing I have a copy. Her sponsor read about it, understand about it, and she give the rights and benefits. And of course, this law is like we cannot make it like we cannot make it alone. Of course, we need the help of government agencies to inform employers. And most of all, the company supply, the agency that will supply domestic workers from the Philippines. And most importantly, implementation, of course, because at the end of the day, we as domestic workers globally just want our basic rights to be recognized. Just like, and my in BDWP, I always told to all my members, to all officers, like we start together, we finish together, and no one left behind. So I'm hoping someday all the sponsors will recognize this law, because it's our rights. We came here, domestic workers, decent work. We're not slaves, so we're fighting just for our rights. So hopefully soon, it's not, maybe not this year, next year, but hopefully soon, all domestic workers would be recognized and will be benefited from their. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jinx. Thank you for sharing also your personal experiences with this. And
Yeah.
it's great for all the work you're doing. And last but not least, from Jordan, we have May Joy. If you could please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, sisters. Good evening and good morning, wherever you are. I'm AJ Salapare, a Filipino domestic workers working here in Jordan for almost 12 years now. I am the president of the Domestic Workers Solidarity Network and also the president of the Allied Filipino community, which is the Allied migrant workers in Jordan.
Hello, Joy. So we usually call May Joy for short. So after the survey, last time when we had the calls in each country, you mentioned several points studies on. So if you could please share that with the group now.
So we strongly recommend another survey in the future based on the result of the study, the COVID-19. The big percentage of the domestic workers are unaware of the law is alarming, and we should find out further why and how we can address this gap, especially those that are living inside the employer's house, because there are no access for the phone, or sometimes they are not allowed to use phone. So we have really recommend how we can reach out for them, because living inside the employer's house are very, very hard also for the domestic workers, especially that those workers are not treated very well by the employers. So we have to let them know that they have their own rights also, that they have the rights to use the phone, they have the rights that they have also a day off, and or if they cannot go outside, they have also the right to rest inside their room if they don't want to go outside. And let's find out also why they let's find out they have already access to internet or the television or any to use smartphone, because if they don't know or they cannot use this kind of what you call this like the smartphone, they could not I was mentally blocked, sorry. They could not they have limited access to somebody, especially if they need some help, because they could not use their phone, so where they can ask help. So this is what we are trying to solve, especially the social media platforms and access to internet or televisions, which social media platforms are not accessible to them. What is their navigating skills at the internet or even the smartphones or computers? if they even have this information available, if they have this information available in their own benefits. Equally alarming is why so many workers have no idea that there are organizations representing the domestic workers sectors. What are we missing, and who are to be missed out? Because those who are live-in, they don't know that there is organizations like the domestic workers, the IDWF, or any organizations in their own country that are helping the domestic workers. Especially they need like this one, the COVID situation, right? They don't have any access to any help, some help from the government or from the organizations, like giving relief goods and the assistance from the government, because they are not aware of this. So this is like we strongly recommend to further the study of from the IDWF. So hope so that you can support the study. Thank you so much. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello, Lara.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Rula, are you there?
I am.
Yes, please. I think something is happening on her screen is freezing. Yeah.
Okay. It seems
Yes.
that disconnect.
Yes. I understand. Yes, please.
So hello, this is Rula once again. I'm your backup entertainer.
Thank you. Thank you very much,
Lovely
Rula.
position to have.
Yes.
So I think while we wait for our regional coordinator to come back, which should take about only 2 minutes, we have one question in the question and answers. So Asetu is asking us is asking actually you, the data gatherers, whether you have encountered domestic workers that have completely refused to respond to the questions, and whom did you target when you were going about your work? Did you have a target audience or a particular profile of workers that you have been looking for? Who would like to take on this response? This could be any of the panelists, or Malu, or is the question clear?
Would like to say that again, the questions, please? Yeah.
Have you experienced or have you encountered any domestic worker when you were doing the data collection that has refused to respond to the questions? And did you have a particular target audience or a particular worker's profile that you were looking for as you were doing the data collection? Experienced or have you encountered any domestic worker when you were doing the data collection that has refused to respond to the questions? And did you have a particular target audience or a particular worker's profile that you were looking for as you were doing the data collection? So experienced or have you encountered any domestic workers?
Yes,
if I may answer.
Yeah. I can hear myself on replay, so if we can just fix the little technical issue.
A particular target audience or
Sorry. Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah. Good afternoon and good evening to everyone. And thank you, Rola, for being the backup facilitator for tonight. So anyway, as a data collector during when we were doing the survey, I did encounter interviewees, domestic worker from South Asia, and she was. We were halfway of of the questionnaire, and all of a sudden she said, "I don't think I can do this anymore. The sponsor might find out, that I gave out some intimate or very private information about their situation at work. So from there's nothing we can do but to stop the questionnaire. But we told her beforehand that there will be their names won't be taken, even their numbers won't be included in the submission of the question, the answers, but nevertheless, we have to respect their decisions. So anyhow, the study, the demographics, it was like a snowball. So when a number is being referred to us by the domestic workers we have previously interviewed, so we have yet to know if she's live-in or if she's working for an agency. So we all find out this data while doing the interview. So we have been given a specific quota for different nationalities to conduct the interviews with. But overall, the experience was really educational. While challenging it was, but it was very educational, even for me. It wasn't my first time to do a survey, but this is a whole new ball game, and it's really, you have to really earn their trust, because we are strangers for them. We don't know them. We're just talking over the phone. So you have to be really respectful. And if they don't want to do the interview anymore, you just have to, just explain to them, okay, we respect your decision. So, and if in case she changes her mind, we can keep the number and then let us know if she wanted to do the interview again. So that's my experience. Thank you.
Thanks, Malu.
And Lara's back.
Thank you. I'm so sorry. These are the technical issues that always happen at the worst possible time. Always. And thanks, Malu, for sharing your experience. Just wanted to check if there are any other questions that we're going through the chat. And if anyone whose hand is raised would like to, let me just, Valerie, you have your hand raised? No. Okay. So would you like to ask a question? Let's see. So where can we find? It's an amazing one. Thank you so much, Carolina. We will be publishing this study as IDWF and disseminating the information. So in hope that the more people are aware of it, the more people can look at our recommendations, look at the results, and actually use this information to better the situations of domestic workers in the region. And more generally, right? Because it sheds some light on the general situation as well. Let me see. On peut savoir le nombre de travailleurs. Okay, if I'm not mistaken, I'm not very fluent in French, but you're asking about the name of the number. You mean the number of respondents? Translation help.
Yes, the question is, Asitu is asking, can you know the number of workers that have been responding to the research?
Oh, the total number for sure. So let me, In Jordan, we had 221 workers that answered the survey. In Kuwait, 210, and in Qatar, 206 workers. What we did is we actually also looked at the nationalities of domestic workers in each of the countries, and we tried to allocate similar to a quota, you know, to have similar percentages to the nationalities of domestic workers to make sure that we are being as representative of the population as possible. Does that answer your question?
Also have another question from Asertu, who's on fire today.
Sure.
Thank you, Asertu.
Go ahead. Thank you for your interest.
The question is, in the beginning, Lara has mentioned that the data collectors have received a training in order to be able to conduct the data collection well. So what was the training and how long did it take?
Okay, interesting questions. Thank you for asking. So the training was, so we recruited a researcher to conduct the study. And this researcher put together a small training that included the methodology used, the questions, how to ask these questions, how to ask for consent, because as mentioned a bit ago, that some of the respondents were worried about retaliation. There are so many issues they don't know. The techniques, it's important to be able to introduce yourself, introduce the research, what the data is for. So, so we had Zoom trainings for each country. And then we had practice sessions for different data collectors, which were mock telephone calls. It took different data collectors different times because some people, for some people, it was a completely new experience. For others, they had more access to something similar or had easier access to languages. We also had the survey translated into the languages of the different nationalities just to make it easier on the data collectors. So I hope this answers your question. Let me check the...
We also have a comment from Rose. So if from Rosa, if Rosa can type the comment so we can read it out loud, it would be good.
Where is? And anyone else, also any one of the speakers, if you feel like sharing anything else that that came to mind, please do. I guess we're waiting for Rosa to type in the comment. No pressure, Rosa.
Lara, if I
Yes.
may, because I think a lot of our data collectors have experienced, have encountered, like the interviewees were somehow, since we're talking about COVID-19, how it's affected their lives as a worker and as a person, as a family member, I think they were somehow expecting some sort of a reward, like financial aid or some food relief. And it was, you know, how to say this, we initially told them that you know, before starting the interview, that there will be no reward, but this is going to benefit the domestic workers in the future. But you know how it's it will really touch you, but you just cannot how do you say this, it's heartbreaking, because we know that they needed help, but it's not the right I mean, they needed help, but it's not because they did the survey, they participated, and they will be rewarded. So at the end of the interview, we have to tell them if you needed help for food relief. And so we connect them to the proper channels, to the organization and NGOs that really do these activities. In case of Qatar, we have Qatar Charity that gives food packages for those who lost their jobs during the pandemic. And I think some of the data collectors here, Mayjoy and Maggie and Chinks, for sure have encountered this type of a situation when they were doing the study. Am I right, Miss Mayjoy? Would you like to say something about it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
This
you,
is
Lara.
our hardest and our experience also, because it's hard. The domestic workers, or the one that we are interviewed, it's the timing for them, the time that we have to interview them, because they are working out. We are working outside and they're also working inside, so our time will not meet. Also, some of the domestic workers that we are also interviewing are also living outside, or the freelancers. So we have also to wait for their time, or their vacant time, to conduct the interview. So this is really, really heartbreaking for us interviewee, because we have to wait for their free time and also our time to be met, to be interviewed, and also for their expectations also, because they knows that as the data collectors, we are also distributing some relief goods from the NGOs and from our governments, or from some of the organizations that are supporting us. So they really knows that we are giving those relief. But the hardest thing, that if they are asking us that if this interview, if you interviewed us, we can receive also some relief goods from your organizations again, but because we are already finished the one that we are giving the relief goods, so still they are still expecting more, that we can also provide them more, because until now some of the domestic workers, especially those that are living outside, are still out of work. They still could not return back to their own work. So this is our biggest problem that we encountered during the interviews, their time and the expectations of the interviewee. Thank you.
Thank you both, Joy and Malu. This is something difficult to handle, of course, because you're talking to someone who is in need of a certain assistance, but that we can't provide, and at the same time, also I think Maggie mentioned that, like, you feel like you're taking up some of their free time to answer those questions. So it's so many issues that you had to deal with as data collectors. So thank you so much for that. I'm also looking at the chat now, and someone made a comment about, so they're glad the domestic workers are not affected by COVID-19, contrary to those in the UK. I think what we saw in the study was that it really depends on the dynamics, because the domestic workers were needed to do the work. So in some cases, they did not lose their job. However, that led to other challenges that they are facing, unfortunately. And Joffrey is asking if my question, how, most domestic workers don't have a phone number because of lack of official documentation. So how
domestic worker जो हैं उनके पास phone number नहीं है
by authorities? I am not quite sure of what your question is.
मुझे नहीं समझ में आया कि आपका प्रश्न क्या है.
Our role and what
पर मैं ये सोचती हूँ कि जो हमारी जिम्मेवारी है, जो हमारा रोल है,
we try to disseminate information and make sure that
हम कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि जो जानकारी है उन तक पहुंचाई जाए और जो उनके हक हैं वो उन तक पहुंचाए जाए.
But I think in terms of communication, as long as there is a means of communication,
पर वार्तालाप के जरिए अगर हम कहें,
it doesn't have to be a phone number. It can be through
जरूरी नहीं
means of
है कि वो
communication
फोन
like
नंबर
social
हमें
media.
दें, कुछ भी हो सकता है, वो व्हाट्सएप
How
के
did
जरिए
you
भी कर
manage
सकते
the
हैं.
pressure of getting answers when employers were around? Excellent question. Did you face some difficulties? So who wants to
बहुत
take?
अच्छा प्रश्न है ये. जब किस
Let me answer this question.
Go ahead.
I encountered one domestic workers who was actually one of her friends give it her number to me. Then I messaged her through.
मेरी एक दोस्त थी जिसको मैं उनको पूछ रही थी इंटरव्यू के बारे में, उन्होंने कहा कि ठीक है. फिर मैंने उनको फोन किया. जब मैंने इंटरव्यू शुरू किया, उसने कहा बाद में मुझे फोन करना, मेरे स्पॉन्सर यहाँ है, और उन्होंने फोन काट दिया और उन्होंने मेरे को मैसेज किया कि मुझे फोन करो, मैं अब करूँगी, मैं अब इंटरव्यू दे सकती हूँ. कह रही थी.
And then she answered, I'm
क्योंकि एम्प्लॉयर ने बोला है
just finish with your friends and
मेरे
prepare.
बॉस ने बोला कि मेरे लिए कुछ खाना बना के दो. तब उसने बोला कि मैं अपने दोस्त के साथ बात कर रही हूँ फोन पे. तो उन्होंने बोला कि
He grabbed the phone and
कि
talked to me like, what is this? Why are you asking my domestic workers? Why?
जब उनको पता चला कि मैं फोन के ऊपर वो मेरी दोस्त बात कर रही है कोविड-19 के बारे में, जैसे उसने सुना तो उन्होंने फोन उनसे छीन लिया. तब उन्होंने मुझसे बात करना शुरू कर दिया. मैंने बोला कि आप कौन हो, आप यहाँ पे फोन कैसे कर रहे हैं, आप सरकार की तरफ से, आप कैसे हमें फोन कर सकते हो. और उन्होंने फोन काट दिया और उन्होंने बोला कि मुझे कभी भी फोन नहीं करना. तो उस लड़की ने मुझे बाद में मैसेज किया कि जो भी कुछ हो उसके लिए मुझे माफ करना. पर किसी तरीके से हमने वो इंटरव्यू खत्म करने की कोशिश की और कई दिन लग गए हमें इसको खत्म करते हुए. इस तरीके से इसको मैंने हैंडल किया. इस तरीके से मैंने उनकी जो प्राइवेसी थी, उनकी सेफ्टी थी, उसके बारे में सोचा, क्योंकि उनके एम्प्लॉयर भी थे उनके आसपास. हो सकता है कि वो वीजा उसका कैंसिल कर दें या क्या करें. बहुत सारे भागों में मैंने उनका इंटरव्यू लिया. क्या मैं इसके ऊपर एक और चीज कर सकती हैं?
Two cases, and when I called the lady, the person I did interview with her was her sponsor. I will ask her the question, she will ask the maid. She did not trust that. She thought that the maid will say things that will make her be in trouble because she was not treating her well. So she said, we'll do this together and I'll be the one who will ask her. So it was like, I will ask her and she will ask her domestic worker. So sometimes it was not easy for us, and we did it. And another one is I did on WhatsApp. The lady wanted to do the interview, but she did not have her phone number and to call. So I did it on WhatsApp. The lady, I did like 3 days. And the chat, when I asked her question, she doesn't know she was asking her boss. And so some of these people, this employer, they were very complying with whatever we are doing, as long you assure them that this is nothing to do with the government and we are not going to share their names or anything.
Thank you both And this is something I think several data collectors encountered. It just it speaks a lot to where we're working, right? It's really not easy, and it's really important always to just make sure that the worker is safe, because that's the priority. And I remember we had several conversations around this issue with each other in the different countries where the study was conducted, with different with different data collectors, about, making sure that the domestic workers is safe, and it's okay. Like, the priority is not to collect information, because we know that it can be very sensitive. Another comment was shared by Joffrey, that is that a suggestion to arrange a session on mental health, because post COVID, noted, we will see. And I think that some organizations will probably do that. Thank you for the suggestion. Does anyone else have a question? Let me check the Q&A box. Okay, so I think that's a no, right? From our side, so I just wanted to share something. So during the consultations with each of the 3 countries, we asked the data collectors and domestic workers if, similarly to what Joy said, and it was actually her suggestion, of what they would like to study further, and if there is something else we could look into. And in addition to what she shared, some other people mentioned focusing on the distress that domestic workers face and breaches to their rights, and using it to push some advocacy messages and raise awareness, and to study the situation of different nationalities more closely, because they thought it was interesting that there was this difference, and to closely look at the situation of live-in domestic workers, because they might be harder to reach in some contexts, because we want to look inside the employer's house, which is considered a private setting, and to focus on wages and overstaying fines to see if there are any trends there. So we will see what can be done there, and hope that this work can help improve the situation. I wanted to first ask if anyone would like to add anything, any of the speakers.
Something about Jeffrey said about mental health. That is a big concern, and I don't know how we are going to do about it, because I came to notice most of domestic workers, they have mental health condition, and most it affects their mood at work. They don't think straight, and suddenly their behavior changes, and the moment your employee will notice those things, him or her will start mistreating you, because maybe they will not understand that you are not okay. They'll think maybe you are being rude, or somebody is poisoning your mind. So most of the time when I talk to them, first I have to know the condition of their mind. How do they think? And another part, it is hard for us to do that because of this same domestic worker. They like listening to rumors. What they are seeing, somebody will just wake up and think about something, I'll write and post something, and they will believe those rumors, but not what not the thing that is in the media or is in the government side. They just want to listen to friends and rumors. You'll tell somebody, oh, take these steps and you get help. But for them, they don't want to do that. Sometimes we blame them. So to have some kind of lesson teaching or awareness about that. Because when most of this happen and before you finish your contract, you'll have a very miserable and problem during your contract, 2 years. And you can imagine every time you're waking up with different condition of behavior, different thinkings and moods. So it's not easy. We need to have an awareness about that.
Definitely. Thank you, Maggie. Rola made a comment about mental health for domestic workers being a tricky subject in the Middle East, and that employers might accuse domestic workers of being insane, crazy, to explain certain behaviors. And that is true. That's why it's a sensitive topic. I think mental health in general in the MENA still remains a taboo and an issue that we don't really talk about and address properly. But specifically with domestic workers, as to quote Rula, domestic workers need to reclaim mental health. Good point. I think it's a process. And I think now with the pandemic, it's just not, it's a tough situation that people are going through in general, and it just makes things worse. So it makes it trickier to work on this. It makes it like even health workers who usually address this type of issue, like now it's a tricky time to work on and everything, but much needed, definitely.
Yes, and I heard that you cannot just do that in Qatar. You might find yourself in trouble. So I know it's not easy. We might think you are helping them and we will find ourselves in hot soup with the government.
Yeah, exactly. So we need to think a few steps ahead. Anyone else? I'm trying to see if... I don't think we have any more questions, right? Yes, indeed, wise words, Maggie. Okay, I take that as a no. Joy, Chinks, Malu? No? Okay.
I just want to say thank you to all our speakers. They were so brave. They did an awesome job during the survey, as well as today. Congrats.
Thank you so much also for the support, IDWF.
Thank you all so much. I just want to say that it's been an honor to work with all of you brave women, those who have had the courage to share and speak today, those who have been listening onto the webinar, and those who couldn't make it because they're still working or have other things to do. It's been an honor getting to know you, although virtually so far. Thank you everyone for showing interest and being with us today.